Katie?
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good morning. Thank you to Rich. Rich is always like just the best hype man. I love having Rich here with us. And I love seeing all of you. You're like my Thursday bakers. We're here every Thursday baking live with Michaels, which is so much fun. My name is Katie. For those of you I haven't met, as Rich said, I'm a pastry chef and I get to do amazing baking classes here with Michaels, which are always so much fun. And today we're doing a rainbow cake. I was sort of joking with him before, like, there's so much on the table today. So it is a lot. We're going to bake the cake from scratch. We're going to do all different rainbow colors. This is sort of like a tie-dye situation. You might be used to seeing like separate layers of each color. Today we're kind of having a little bit more fun with it and tie-dyeing the cake, so that'll be really fun. We're going to have, oh yes, I do. Somebody said I have the whole bakery counter on the table. I do. I have a lot of stuff. But we're also going to make an American style buttercream. We're going to do a cream cheese frosting today because I thought that would be delicious, since we're kind of sticking with like a vanilla cake just to give it a little extra tanginess, break up the sweetness a little bit. And then I'm going to be using a green cake drip that actually comes from Michael's. It's like pre-made. We're going to do a beautiful St. Patrick's Day drip, some rainbow piping. So there's a lot on the table. So literally, so Rich, if you want to come, if you want to come down, I'll show you what's on the table. And we can go from there. And don't look at my cream cheese. I was joking with him before class that why? Like, why? In 2025, we're still putting cream cheese in those foil packages that are just impossible to open. Cream cheese makes me very upset. But to make the vanilla cake today, so we're doing a very quick one bowl batter. This is an oil-based cake, so it stays really tender in the refrigerator, which is helpful, especially since we're using cream cheese frosting. It's a cake you will want to keep refrigerated. I love this batter for that purpose. I also use it for cupcakes. So if you like this recipe, if you bake along, you can convert this into cupcakes really easily as well. But to run you through my cake batter ingredients, so I've got a neutral oil, like I'm using vegetable oil. You can use canola oil. You can kind of use anything that you like. And Rich just threw up, I believe, the rainbow cake recipe in the chat. So you can definitely check that out as well if you missed it. I've also got sour cream, which is such a lovely addition to cake. It's going to add really nice tenderness. It's going to add some extra moisture, some fat, also that little bit of tanginess, which is so nice. An egg is a binder. And if you are looking at the recipe, you're noticing I'm having the recipe right now. So that's why I've got one egg instead of two. I'm doing a half batch. And I'll kind of take you through why in a minute. I've got all-purpose flour, nice neutral flour. You could also use cake flour if you want. And somebody just asked, can you use olive oil? I wouldn't recommend it only because you are going to taste the olive oil in the cake. Unless that's what you're going for, then yes. But otherwise, I would use something really neutral without too much of a flavor for that oil choice there. I've got baking powder, baking soda, kosher salt, granulated sugar, water, and whole milk. If you wanted to, you could also use buttermilk for this, and you could even kind of add together your sour cream and milk and make a buttermilk, which is essentially what we're doing here in a way. And Tricia had a great question. Any substitute for eggs? So any sort of, if you're looking for like a vegan recipe specifically, I would definitely look for a recipe that specifically is vegan. But if you're just looking for regular swap outs, plant-based milk and things like that is an easy one. You can even skip the sour cream and just go all plant-based milk. You could swap the egg or leave it out. I've actually done that in this recipe and it works out really well. But any sort of egg substitute that you like, you could definitely use like a flaxseed situation. You could go for egg beaters if you're just looking for something a little bit more affordable right now, especially with the price of eggs going on, which is so crazy. That would work as well. And Bridget, so you can follow along, but you don't have to. You can absolutely just watch as well, and it'll post to the YouTube channel in about 48 hours. So if you do decide to bake this later, you could always look back at it just for reference. Totally up to you if you want to bake along. I know some of us here have our aprons on, so some of us are baking, but no pressure. You definitely do not have to. For my buttercream frosting, I've got butter. This is unsalted, and you'll notice it's at room temperature. And that you just want it to be nice and tender. We sort of talked about this in classes before, and especially for something like a cream cheese frosting, the temperature of your ingredients really does matter. So when we talk about room temperature butter, you'll notice that if I press on this, it's sort of making a slight indent, but I'm not squishing. It's not really melty. It doesn't look glossy or slick in any way. It's just been left at room temperature for about an hour or so, even a little bit longer. And that way it'll kind of come to room temperature over time. And if you did forget to take out your cream cheese and butter, the cream cheese you don't have to worry about. You can use it cold. We'll talk about tips and tricks for that. But the butter, if you've ever done the hot glass trick, you fill a glass with hot water empty it out, and then just place it over your butter. And that helps soften your butter really quickly as well. That's a nice trick. Or of course the microwave really carefully can do that as well. I've got salt to balance the sweetness in my frosting. I've got powdered sugar. This is a 2-pound bag. That's nice and easy. And I've got my cream cheese. And the cream cheese, in terms of temperature, the softer your cream cheese, the softer your frosting is going to be. So same idea. I would say no more than an hour or so at room temperature. If it's a warm day, even half an hour is plenty. Just to kind of take the chill off of it a little bit is good enough. And then we've got some fun stuff. So I've got some vanilla just to flavor my cake. I love my vanilla bean paste. You can use extract as well. I've got a bunch of gel colors here. Some are upside down because I'm down to the bottoms. But of course, I've got all the rainbow colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And gel color is really important, especially for the frosting, just to get the most vibrant, potent color with the smallest amount of liquid being added. So those are really helpful for that. And I love this. I'm new to using this and I'm like obsessed with it. Super easy cake drip in like seconds. Who knew that this was a thing? Probably some of you. But you can microwave this like we're going to do today, and it just makes the perfect drip on a chilled cake, which is so fabulous. So it comes in all different colors. I got green for St. Patrick's Day. And that'll be really fun. And then, of course, to finish our cake, I have like some fun sprinkles and things like that. We've got all sorts of options here, so it should be really fun. And so vanilla bean paste can be swapped 1-to-1 for liquid. Absolutely. I sometimes cheat and add a little bit more. The beauty of vanilla bean paste is you're sort of adding these little flecks of vanilla bean into your actual dessert, which I just love, especially for things like custards and buttercreams. I like those little flecks. You definitely don't have to. You could definitely just use vanilla extract as well. And then, of course, I have cake pans. So I sort of mentioned that I have the batter today. I have a cake that's ready to go because I didn't want to wait to have to frost it. But today, you can't really tell on camera, but these are mini pans. These are about 5-inch pans that I got from Michael's. And I thought it'd be really cute to just bake like a mini version just for funsies. So I have mini cake pans today, and you'll find this recipe is really versatile. You can kind of use it for a variety of sizes. Obviously, the larger your pans, the less layers you're going to achieve. But we're going to fill these about 3/4 to about an inch and bake our layers that way. So that'll be really fun. So we're going to dive right in. I'm going to start with the cake batter. So I'm going to move the buttercream ingredients out of the way. And again, this is like a 1-bowl cake batter. I love 1-bowl batters. I have a chocolate cake recipe like this that I think we made once in class. And also this vanilla. I hate having a cream butter to make cakes. I feel like it's so time consuming. You have to pull out the mixer just for the purpose. When a 1-bowl batter is always so tender and just lovely on its own. So I definitely opt for those when I can. So we're going to get our wet ingredients here first. Oh, perfect. And Laura, I think Rich just shared it for you there. Let's get our egg in there. And these are large eggs. And somebody asked if they use, I think it was last week, if they use a medium egg instead of a large egg or an extra large. I know right now, like it's so hard to get the eggs that you maybe want or are used to at the price that you're used to. So just keep in mind, the larger the egg or the smaller the egg, the less egg you're adding into your recipe. So sometimes, depending on the item, you might need to adjust the weight a little bit. So if I was using medium eggs instead of large, maybe I would augment with an extra half an egg for 2 eggs, just to kind of make up that difference. Oh, nice. They love the chocolate cake. That's great. Yeah, I love that chocolate cake. I feel like it's so rich and it's so easy. It's just so nice. So I'm just whisking my wet stuff. You want to kind of whisk out all those lumps of sour cream so they don't sort of end up in your finished cake batter. It comes together pretty quick. I'm going to lob in my vanilla. Just measure with your heart a little bit here. Perfect. And you do really taste it. It's amazing. That vanilla bean really, you even see those flecks now. Just so lovely. All right, so the sugar is going to go in. And sugar, oddly enough, you kind of think of sugar as a dry ingredient. But you can kind of see how once you add it into your wet ingredients, it kind of melts in. So in my mind, it's almost more of a wet ingredient than a dry one. So it's kind of easier to edit at that point. Now our dry stuff, we've got flour, baking powder, baking soda, salt. You can whisk them together if you want to, but I just kind of whisk them together right in there. Nice and easy. Oh yes, there is. So somebody was asking if the chocolate cake video, it was the Valentine's Day heart cake, I believe was the chocolate cake. And so if you're not using eggs, I actually have made this recipe without eggs at all. You can add an extra tablespoon or so of sour cream if you want to, just to keep that wet dry ratio going. That should be fine. Jennifer always has the best jokes. Jennifer just said, wouldn't it be nice if sugar just melted off our bodies? It would. It really would. I feel
Trisha,
like oh yes, go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, didn't mean to
Yes.
interrupt.
Yes.
Um, Trisha is wondering if she's not using egg, what can she balance the weight with?
Yes. So yeah, I was just saying. So you can add like an extra tablespoon or so of sour cream if you want, just to kind of balance. But I've actually made this without eggs completely, and even for a vegan cake, I just swapped in a plant-based, like either soy milk, oat milk, almond milk, whatever you prefer. The creamier the milk, the better the result typically. So something that's a little bit thicker. Just swap the milk one for one, and then I just left the eggs out completely, and it always turns out really nicely. So I would say if you want to, an extra tablespoon or so of the sour cream, if you are doing dairy without eggs, you could definitely do that. All right, so let's get our cake batter ready to go. So you do need a good amount of bowls because we're going to be making all of the colors. Now, you definitely use disposable bowls if you want to. I meant to get disposable bowls, and and then I forgot. So we're going to just be using regular bowls. So I'm going to portion out 6 different bowls of batter. You can kind of eyeball it if you want to. And what's funny is, and I didn't do this, but I realized afterward, after I baked the other batch, you should kind of go heavier on your outside colors. So if you're doing purple, and you'll see what I mean when I start pouring it into the pans, but purple, blue, green, those kinds of colors, you could kind of bulk up a little bit. And then once you get to the center colors like red, orange, and yellow, you can kind of go a little bit lighter because they do take up a lot of space in the middle, but you'll see what I mean on that. So let's go ahead and add some colors. So again, we're using gel colors, which is so fun. And for some reason, and you know this if you work with gel colors, I always end up with gel colors on my hands, no matter how clean I am. So it's totally up to you, but I do like putting on gloves for this purpose. And the vanilla bean paste, so that's Nielsen Massey. I get mine online because it's so much cheaper. But you can get a big bottle of it. You can get a small one. You can even get it at the supermarket, I think. But it's great. I love vanilla bean paste. I'm a big fan. All right, so we're going to choose one of the smaller ones for red. So I'm going to start backwards here. So a couple of drops of red. And the best part about a cake like this is you can color this really however you like. So if you're doing like a pastel party, you want to do some pastel colors. If you don't want to color it at all, you could just throw in some sprinkles and make it a funfetti situation. You can use natural food colorings are really nice. Kind of anything you feel. Got some really, you can see just with like a drop of color, it really does color it really vibrantly, which is lovely. A little yellow. I had some scraps of this cake out yesterday when my daughter came home from school and she was like mesmerized. She was so, she's like, what's that? Yeah, kids in rainbows. Okay. Got some green. I'm going pretty bright. And you notice because I'm going in order, I'm just using one spoon or spatula for everything. Color theory, start with your red. Yeah, exactly. 2 drops and it's so vivid. Yeah, totally. For sure. Yeah, that's the beauty of gel color. I feel like to get, like if you're making a red velvet cake and you're using liquid red, the number of bottles that you need, it's like scary sometimes. You're like, wow, come on, red. work with me here. But the cocoa really helps you out a little bit there. All right. And I do love this. I've talked about this before, but this Satin Nice Violet is so nice. I feel like other colors, for some reason, when I buy purple, it always has too much blue. But the Satin Nice Violet is like such a beautiful color. It's a really nice purple. All right, so let's prep our cake pans.
I have a quick question, Katie.
Yeah,
Will the color come out lighter or darker once the cake bakes?
actually, pretty much the same. It's going to darken on the edges, but you'll see in the ones I baked off already, pretty much the same. You're pretty, you might be like just a tiny, tiny shade darker, but really it's going to be almost exactly the same as you see it here. All right. So I've got my mini pans. I've got some parchment. And I'm just going to go ahead and trace. We can kind of do this in a variety of ways. We can cut this and sort of make squares. If you want to see like a fun way to do it, of course, you can also just trace your cake pans. I like doing like a little origami sometimes. It's fun. I'm going to take off my glove. No, I'll leave them on. So if you take a piece of parchment like this, make sure it's big enough for your cake pan. I'm just going to kind of fold it up and create almost like a little, as if you were making a snowflake when you were a kid. And you just kind of hold it in the center, or you could flip your pan over and kind of bring it to the middle. And then all I'm going to do is just trim right along the edge where I marked it. And when you open it up, get this nice round. So it makes it really easy to kind of line your cake pans just like that. But you can also trace as well, just with like a Sharpie, anything like that. Now I'm going to spray these before I put these in because we don't want our cake sticking. It just fits right in nice and easy. And make sure it's really flat. Could do the same thing again. How many drops of food gel? Yeah, I just put a couple. Exactly. Yes, thank you. Exactly. I think on some of them, like on the yellow, I think I really only used like one. Yellow can be so vivid. Mhm. All right, and I sort of mentioned tie-dye. So if you want to, you can also do individual layers for sure. Like if I wanted a red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple layer, I could bake separate layers. I could use 6 pans instead of 3, or you can bake a batch and then take them out and then do a second batch. But we're going to kind of tie-dye it a little bit. So I'm going to start with my purple. And just in each pan, I'm going to pour in a little bit of purple. And this depends on like how much of a perfectionist are you? Me, not so much. If you are, I would say this might be terrifying for you because none of these layers will come out exactly the same. They're each going to be like a little bit unique in their own way, but they are really fun. Blue. Green. And I think I'm going to get one more layer out of this. So I'm not going to use all of my batter. I'm going to save a little bit for later. Red, orange, yellow. I forgot for a second which was next. Yellow. You can see if I went with the same amount of red as my purple, let's say, I would end up with such a big spot of red right in the middle. It would take up like almost the whole cake. So just a little bit. It's good. So fun. All right. So cute, right? So be careful when you move these around. You don't really want to like shake them too much or anything. But at this point, if you haven't already, you will preheat your oven to 350. And these are going to go in, and we're just going to bake until they spring back to the touch, which we've kind of talked about before. But because you have sort of a variety of options in terms of cake pan sizes, note that the smaller your cake pan, typically the faster the cakes are going to bake. They're so fun, right? I like these. Whee! So if you are working with smaller pans like I am today, these are like cute little 5-inch sizes. You do want to keep an eye, even if the recipe says it's going to take 20 minutes or 25 minutes. Whatever your recipe says, I always like to check at least 5 minutes before the baking time should be done. And just give them a touch or test with the toothpick and just see if there's any wet bits of batter still clinging, or if you've just got moist bits of cake. That's a really good place to be. And you do want to kind of just press with your finger and make sure the cake is springing back to the touch, that it feels nice and firm without being overly dried out. And Carla, maybe Rich will share the recipe one more time in the chat. Would be awesome. I'm going to get these in. And I'll show you the cake layers already baked in a minute, because of course they're nice and cool. And we'll talk about how you can make your cake layers ahead as well, to kind of break this process up into multiple days, which can definitely make things easier. But before we do that, we're going to get started on our cream cheese frosting. So let me go ahead and push this over a little bit here. I've got a piping bag here. I've got some cake tools. We'll talk about those in a sec. Let's get my green towel going. We're really themed today. Very St. Patrick's Day. Okay. So stand mixer with a paddle attachment, not a necessity. You could definitely use a handheld mixer as well, which would be great, no pressure. But I do love using my stand mixer for frostings. And now we sort of talked about temperature, and if you've made cream cheese frosting before and you've ended up with lumpy frosting, I feel like this is an important thing to kind of talk about. So you've got different moisture contents here, different textures going on these two. And a lot of recipes will say throw them in the bowl and just beat them together. And the only issue with that is if for some reason your butter is softer than your cream cheese, or your cream cheese is obviously going to be softer than your butter, sometimes they just don't emulsify completely to that smooth state that you want. So I like to just take a feel and see which one of these is firmer. And that's the one I'm going to start with first. So my butter, even though it's softened, it's a cold day. It's a little bit on the firmer side. So I'm going to get that in first. And what we're going to do is we're slowly going to work in our cream cheese just to make sure it stays really, really smooth for that perfect consistency. So I've got 2 sticks of butter, 1 cup of butter. And I'm just going to beat this up for a couple of seconds. Give that a sec here. Grab my vanilla. All right, and you see that's nice and smooth. That's all you need. You want to make sure that this is smooth first. So I'm going to go ahead and just scrape everything down. Make sure as I add my cream cheese, it's all going to work in evenly. Now, instead of throwing it all in at once, I'm just going to add it about a pat or 2 at a time. And this is like a foolproof way to just make sure that everything stays really smooth without any issues. So the first one, I'm even throwing in about half of that first block and just beating it in. Perfect. And you see it went in really nice and smooth. I have no issues. If for some reason I noticed that maybe it wasn't mixing in properly, give it another minute, let it really mix in before you add the next pat, because the more you add it once, the more difficult that becomes to get it really smooth. All right, we're looking great. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest. So pop her in. I'm also going to add my salt and my vanilla at this point. And you can kind of add salt to taste really when it comes to frosting. And salt really is important. If you ever find that your frosting is maybe like a little bit flat, it's always the salt. kind of plopped her right in there, but she's finding her way. All right, and then I'm just going to open up my bag of this while that's working. Let the air out first so it doesn't make a mess. All right, and so we're just going to add a little bit at a time in terms of the confectioner sugar. And Gloria, I totally measured by heart on the vanilla bean paste, but you can, I would say maybe like a teaspoon, and then you could always increase the quantity.
What brand is your mixer, Katie?
Yeah, I have somebody asked that last time too, and I love this mixer. I feel like I talk about this mixer a lot because I'm like in love with it. But this is my Breville. It's a Breville mixer. It's a really cute one. It's like a 5-quart size. But I love it. I'm like obsessed with Breville. I also have KitchenAids. I have like the Pro Series. I think they're like 6-quart or 7-quart KitchenAids. I think I have like 4 of them downstairs. Um, but but I always use the Breville because I feel like the Breville is just great. It's got a great motor to it. It's quiet. It's nice size. Love it. Yeah, I used to teach cooking classes in person. This was like pre-COVID. After I owned a bakery, I started doing classes. And so I have like all these mixers from there. And I never know what to do with those mixers. We're just going to start shipping them out as presents at some point. All right, so you notice I'm working slow and I sort of scrape down when I need to. Don't add it all at once or it's just going to make a big mess. But we're working it. Yeah, that's a great idea, Jennifer. I might gift them to a school. That would be great, actually. Yeah, so adding it slowly is important. Somebody was asking how you keep the sugar in. Adding it a little bit at a time, it definitely makes a difference. If you do find that you get that cloud anyway, and it's a real pain in the butt, I would say just take a towel and just wrap it around the top of your bowl. And that'll really just keep everything in it. It'll kind of make sure that it stays really capsulated in the bowl. So this is 2 pounds. We're making a lot of frosting. So it's a 2-pound bag of confectioner's sugar. And you will see the recipe in with the cake recipe. And you see, it's like I get to the end here, it gets harder to like contain. So at this point, I would take like a linen towel or a piece of plastic wrap and kind of just cover the top, keep it in. Just start feeding it in this way, feed it a bit at a time here. Oh, I was so close. So now you can hear the mixer working. It's a heavy load. So I'm just going to feed this a little bit more. And I would say if we weren't here in class, I would even let this go a little bit longer just to get it really nice and light and fluffy. But you could see how smooth and creamy this is, which is great. Always give it a taste. That's nice. That's lovely. I did like a low to medium. It depends what your mixer will take. I like to listen to my mixer. So if my mixer is struggling and I hear the motor working and it's really giving it a workout, I always kind of lower the speed a bit just to give it a break. Because your mixer is like your best friend in the kitchen. You want to be kind to it. But otherwise, if it's holding up nicely, then I would say, feel free to crank it, especially once the sugar is on. And it's not going to fly every place. You can go ahead and crank it up and give it a good beating just to make sure that everything is really light and fluffy and smooth. And then you'll be good to go.
Should you ever worry about over mixing icing?
Not really. I mean, it would take a long time and a lot of effort to really overwork an American style buttercream. In the case of like meringue frostings and things like that, I would say like once you're at the right texture to definitely stop. American style, you could beat it for a good long time. It's going to aerate, it's going to increase in volume, it's going to be nice and fluffy and creamy. You want to check the texture and see, is it pipeable? Is it spreadable if you're using it, to coat a cake? Really look at the texture, the thickness, the smoothness. But you could really whip it, and you could definitely have a nice whipped frosting at that point. I wouldn't worry too much about overbeating it for sure. And yes, they do have shields. They do. I never use the shields, but they do have them for sure. All right. So I'm going to pull out. So I made a little bit of buttercream earlier, and the same way that we colored the cake batter, I went ahead and colored some frosting. So I just put a little bit of this frosting in 6 different bowls, same way, and just made different colors. So I've got some red, some orange, some yellow, green, blue, purple. And then you can pop them into separate piping bags. I just feel like that's such a waste of piping bags. So I just kind of plopped them onto pieces of plastic wrap and made these like long logs of frosting. And what we're going to do is we're going to feed this into one piping bag to create those rainbow designs on our cake. So that'd be really fun. And then I'm going to pull out my cake layers. So I made these in a larger pan yesterday. And same idea, you can kind of see, and I'll unwrap one. And I sort of mentioned I went lighter on the red today because I realized like how much red takes over. But you can see I cut these layers. I wanted lots of layers today, so I cut them even thinner. And I ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. So I've got 5 8-inch layers today, which is going to be a big size cake. So that'll be really fun. You can soak these as well if you want to at this point. You can see as I cut them, I sort of like leveled them a little bit if they needed it. And then I chilled them, which I think is so helpful, especially if you're new to decorating and new to working with layer cakes. Working with cold layers is such an easy way of just keeping your cake stable. If you're working with layers that are fresh out of the oven, even if they're completely cooled, it's always going to be a little bit more difficult to get them to really stay in place as you frost. So you can freeze them, you can refrigerate them up to 2 days ahead, and just be ready to go. And it kind of breaks up the process a little bit as well. So you're not baking and frosting and doing all of that the same day. And Trisha said, so my cake dries up if I refrigerate them. Make sure you're really wrapping each layer individually for sure. And then also a good cake soak. Just a simple syrup, like a 1-to-1 sugar to water. Heat it up on the stove, bring it to a simmer, add vanilla, add a little lemon zest or any flavoring that you love, and then just use it to brush your layers. And that's going to keep them really moist and delicious. So I pretty much always make my cake layers ahead because it's so much to do in one day, especially if you have kids and you're running around. Breaking it up into multiple days just makes it such a simple process. It's kind of fun. So what I'm going to do is just kind of prepare. I've got a turntable. If you don't have a turntable, you can use a Lazy Susan if you have one of those. You could just skip that whole idea completely and just go right on your cake platter. That would be fine also. But I'm going to kind of give my board something to sit on, just with either a damp towel or if you have any sort of mat. Let me dampen this a little bit more, just to kind of keep it in place. I have a cake board. You can also just go right on your cake platter. That would be fine. And all we're going to do is just glue down our first layer a little bit here. I'm going to pull this guy out. Oh, so much creamy frosting. Come with me. We're going to start stacking. The first layer down. Right onto my board, give it a press. And if you're really specific about making sure that everything is really even, you can weigh or use measuring cups to figure out exactly how much frosting you're adding to each layer. I just kind of keep it nice and even, just go by eye. And because I have so many layers, I don't really want a thick layer of buttercream between each today because it's going to really just take over the flavor of the cake completely. So I'm just going nice and thin, about 1/4 inch or even 1/2 inch is more than enough. We're just gonna keep on stacking. And you can see like they're so moist. They're kind of like sticky, which is good. It's a good sign. So when you're decorating cakes, the temperature, we sort of talked about temperature for buttercream and we talked about temperature for different items, but the temperature of your cake, really does make so much of a difference. You could see even as I'm putting the buttercream on, because my cake layers are cold, they're sort of just staying in place automatically, which is so helpful. Now, if your cake layers are warm, I would say in between these steps, like when you're stacking your cake and building it, I would then chill it just to kind of help those filling layers set before I add my crumb coat. So kind of stopping along the way and just letting the cake kind of dictate how fast you move based on how it's performing can be really helpful. I like this one. She's pretty. Give her a pop. And so the only tools I'm really using for this are I've got my offset spatula, and I also have a bench scraper, or if you have any sort of cake smoother that you love, even if it's like a nice extra tall one, that could be really fun if you're working with taller cake layers, just to smooth my exterior.
So Susan's wondering, so by putting the
Yeah.
layers in the refrigerator, does that stop the crumbs from mixing in with the icing?
It does a little bit. I would say if you sliced open your layers like I did, another thing you could definitely do. I know I'm adding my frosting right on. I'm sort of just dolloping it onto the cake. If you do want to make sure that any crumbs from the inside don't end up in the frosting, you can definitely use a piping bag to pipe in the filling as well, and that'll definitely kind of help you avoid that issue. But when it comes to the exterior, we are going to do a crumb coat. So that's going to help keep in my crumbs as well. So just make sure we're even. Kind of bring you to the middle here. So as I turn, I just want to give it an eye and see, are there any areas that are kind of working themselves out from where I want them to be, or are we looking pretty good? And I think we're looking pretty good. So now's when I'm going to start adding my crumb coat. So I'm going to take some, oh, hi. Oh, that's better. Hello. Let me bring you down. Ooh, perfect. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to start working my way around the side, trying not to push my cake around too much here. This is just going to be our crumb coat that's going to keep all of my crumbs inside where they should be. And you can see because my cream cheese was on the cooler side, it's a thick frosting, which is nice. If for any reason your frosting is like a little on the softer side, I would say definitely give it a little bit of a chill if you're having any sort of issue with it. Make sure we're all covered here. And I'm going to work up the top. And all we're doing is just making sure it's covered. We don't want a thick layer, just covering it up. Making sure everything is sealed in. All right, so I'm going to switch over. Got my bench scraper. So by putting the lid, oh yeah, okay, yes. This is just going to clear up my excess and just kind of smooth things out. work my way up the top a little bit. But again, this is just a crumb coat, so I don't have to worry too much about it. When we do our second round, that's when we'll really be more mindful. All right, so I'm gonna clean up my board a little bit. I'm gonna pop this in because we're in class time. We're gonna pop it in the freezer for a couple minutes while I fill my bag with my rainbow frosting. But if you're doing this at home, you could also just refrigerate this until it's firm. You want to make sure that the exterior is nice and firm before you do the next layer, just to make sure none of those crumbs end up where they're not supposed to be. So I'm gonna pop this in the freezer and we'll keep going. And let's just check these. All right. We've got about 2 more minutes on our cake layers, and then I'll show you what those look like. We'll do the spring back test and all of that. So we're going to prepare our piping bag with our rainbow frosting. So I've got a piping bag here, and I have like a nice star tip, which is kind of fun. This is like one of those swirly open stars. But any kind of tip that you have is great. You can kind of have fun with it. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all of those colors that we had and just roll them up into one bag. So I'm going to take one more piece of plastic wrap and set it down. We're going to roll all of those colors together so we get a nice swirl going. I'm just going to kind of flop them out of their plastic. And you can chill these and then let them come to room temperature. That would work really well also. We're kind of going with it today. All right, so I've got my red. My orange. Okay. Yeah, I would say when it comes to crumb coating, right, you did, exactly. When it comes to crumb coating, like don't overthink it. It's just meant to be a layer. Doesn't have to be the most beautiful layer, just a layer. Just to catch the crumbs. That's all. Nobody ever has to see it. That's the whole point. I mean, yes, you all saw mine, but nobody has to see yours. All right, and you notice like most of these are the same length. You want them to kind of come out of the bag at the same time. So that's the only thing. Even if you have more of one than another, just make sure they're all about the same length. And again, you could do this with a piping bag. I just feel like, 6 piping bags just for this purpose. Gets to my conscience a little bit. All right. And because they're all coming out the same way, I'm just going to start stacking up here. Come on. And my violet. And then we're going to pull out those cake layers because I can smell them. Hold that up. So fun. So you can see if I do a spring back, see how they're just springing back to the touch. I've almost got like a little bit of a center where it's leaving just a bit of an indent. That's fine. The key to cake baking is to avoid over baking kind of at all costs, because that's the thing that's going to really dry out your cakes. So even if they're just the teensiest bit moist in the middle, that is totally fine. All right, so all we're going to do here is kind of just roll them up, make a big sausage, just like that. And kind of squeeze them together a little, and then just twist my ends. And I've got this nice rainbow sausage. We've got our piping bag. I'm going to kind of fold down the top here a little. Get my tip in. Give it a cut. Make sure it clears. There we go. Good to go. Cut my bag. And just pop her in there. Now when we pipe, we should get our nice rainbow swirl going on. So it's kind of fun. Yes. Isn't that fun? So then keep them really separate. If you hate that idea and you're like, wow, that's way too much work, you can also just feed the colors into your bag. Just keeping in mind that as you pipe, certain colors are going to come out first or second. It'll be a little bit more of a swirl. This will keep your colors a little bit more separate in the bag as you pipe. So that's really helpful. All right, so back to our cake. Part 2, we're going to coat. Let's scrape down our bowl a little bit here. And again, this frosting is like really nice and firm. So it's a little bit on the stiffer side, but that's fine. Gonna go with it. Okay. So it's been in the freezer, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So it's just firm. It's not overly stable, but it's firm enough. So this is the point where I'm just gonna kind of blob on a bunch of frosting and work it down the sides. And depending on if you plan to transfer this to a platter or anything like that, you can trim down this board as well. You can see my board is kind of a little wider than my cake is. If I was transporting, like if you were selling a cake and you want the board to be a little bit wider, you could choose a size that accommodates. We are going to do a little bit of piping around the edges. And all I'm doing is kind of swirling it down so it's kind of working itself outward. And then I'm just going to come in and kind of push it down the sides really evenly. And this is the point where you kind of want to have a little bit of excess going on. So if you're a little light, feel free to add some. And just work it down the sides. I think I'm going to have like just enough. We'll invite some friends over. All right. So once you've got it all coated, we can kind of smooth it out. So if there's any areas where you feel like could use a little bit more, you could see the cake through a little bit. Now is the time. And if you're using a bench scraper, like I am, or any sort of cake smoother, you want to make sure how you're holding it. So you can see like my cake is straight, right? So I want to make sure that I'm holding my scraper like this. I don't want to be angling in accidentally or angling out because we're going to change, the structure of our cake. We want it to stay really straight. So even if you have to sort of like go against your natural instincts, just keep it as straight as you can, working your way around. And less is more in the beginning of just taking off a little bit. We're not trying to really take off all of the frosting. We're just smoothing it out more than anything. So just a little bit at a time as you work your way around. And if there's any areas that are light and you can see the cake through a little bit, you want to add to it, you can always go back. All we're doing is smoothing it out. And I'm only focusing on the sides right now. So you could do this to the point where you're happy. And for some people, that could mean you're already happy. For some people, that could mean, that you really go at it a little bit longer. It's totally up to you and how smooth you want it to be. But I think once you add piping and things like that, even if your cake is not perfectly perfect, it's still going to look really nice. So as soon as you get to the point where you're happy with it, and you want to make sure that your top is pretty smooth as well, right where the cake edges meet, because we're going to kind of carry that over a little bit. Now is when we're going to kind of go at the top. So I'm just going to angle at about a 45-degree. And all I'm going to do is kind of aim to just reach where the top of the cake is and keep it really flat. So just pulling toward myself just to clean up the edges is all I'm doing. And you want to make sure your scraper is really nice and cleaned off as well. We're just cleaning it up. Just focusing on my edges. I'm going to just warm this up a little bit. I'm running my scraper under some hot water. All right, just to help me out a little bit, just to clean it up. I'm just going to go back and kind of just clean up any areas that I want to smooth out. And again, we're adding so much to this. We're adding a drip, we're adding piping. So don't feel like you need to really go crazy. It's up to you how perfect you want this to be. But all we're going to do now is just chill it until it's firm again so we can add our drip. So I'm going to pop this back in the freezer. And we're just going to prepare our drip. So microwave, a couple of seconds. We've got our drip here. So this is kind of ready to use. So you want to make sure that your cake is really firm before you put this on because it's going to be warm. So especially something like cream cheese frosting, really give it time to chill until it's nice and firm. We're going to kind of cheat it today because we've only got a few minutes left. But you do want to kind of take the top off and just get this in the microwave in about 20-second spurts or so, just until it's really nice and melted. So I'm going to start that up. Make sure we've got all of our decorating stuff ready to go here. And clean up my turntable. And yeah, somebody asked about a link for the turntable. If Rich wants to share that, or else I can link to it. I think there's actually only one on the website that looks exactly like this. So if you search turntable on Michael's, you should be able to find it. All right, so about 20 seconds, still firm. So I'm going to pop it in another 20. And just to decorate, I have like some fun gumballs. I've got these gold coins because I thought that'd be cute for St. Patrick's Day. I've got sprinkles. I love these. I thought these were so cute. These are from Sweet Tooth Fairy, but they're little rainbows, which I thought was just adorable. I was like, oh my God, that's perfect for this. I got some of those too. So we got some fun stuff here. All right, let's see where we're at. So you can see it's starting to soften up here. Looking pretty good. Gonna just go a little bit more. Oops. We should be ready. We'll kind of push this down, make sure this is ready to go too. Come on down. All right. Dip. All right, so once you feel like you're melty, just go ahead and give it a shake. And if we need to go a little bit more, we can, but you can kind of hear the liquid moving around inside a little bit. No, they're very, very appropriate. So just give it a shake, swoosh it around. You don't want this to be like super hot or anything, just nicely melted. And yes, you do definitely. This will be on the YouTube, the Michael's YouTube channel in about 48 hours. So you should definitely check it out there. All right, so I normally would recommend if you are baking this at home, I would say really give this cake more time to chill. We've given it maybe like a couple of minutes, so not too long. But before I grab it out, let me just test and make sure our drip is looking really good. Just see how we're doing here. Make sure nothing's stuck in my tip or anything like that. Let's see. Hold that thought. toothpicks or cake pop sticks. Perfect for this purpose. Come on out. Perfect. There we go. So I don't know if you guys can see that, but a little drop of our drip. So we're looking pretty good. We're ready. Let's pull this guy out. All right. I'll put her down. Hello, Cake. She's firm, but not overly cold, but she's firm. Just get this check going here. There we go. Okay, so if we're ready, so depending on how you want to do it, I'm only going to be doing a drip border. I'm going to be leaving the center white. You can drip the whole thing. And yes, so this is, it's colored green, but it's coating chocolate. So if you check it out, so essentially it's basically like candy melts. It's white chocolate, naturally flavored, green. But yeah, these are kind of ready to go, which is kind of fun. So I don't know if this is a good angle or if you want to go sideways, but all I'm going to do is kind of let it fall down the side and start slow just to see. Rich, if you want to come down to the front. Yeah, there we go. So you could see how it falls. So depending on if you want long drips or short drips, you kind of just add as much as you like. Work your way around. Do some longer ones, some shorter ones. Isn't that cute? And I love that, like, you don't have to make this strip. This strip is just ready for you, which is very convenient. I'm doing this backwards, so I can't really see where I'm where I'm going, but I'm hoping that it's even. But it does coat really nicely. And it kind of takes a lot of the guesswork out of it because if you're working with something like ganache, you know, you want to make sure your texture is really right, your temperature is right. This sort of just makes the whole process really easy. And you can get all different colors. So it's just a really fun way to do a drip cake without all of that extra effort. And it's like really impressive, you know? So fun.
So Jen is wondering,
Woo!
is there any way around microwaving the bottle?
You could probably do it in like a double boiler situation, like a pot of warm water would probably melt it because it is white chocolate. So yeah, if you don't have a microwave, I would say that should work nicely. Just give it enough time in a nice pot to get there for
I
sure.
think she's more concerned
Oh,
with microwaving the plastic bottle or heating the plastic.
oh, oh, I see. You could, well, if there's a way you could cut it out of the bottle and heat it on the stove top or heat it in the microwave without the bottle, you could definitely do that. But yeah, you know, it's a nice sturdy bottle here. I don't know. It is definitely sort of like made for the microwave in a way. So that's tricky. All right. So we're gonna do some little puffy rosette guys. And I do have a lot of my red at the top here, but you could see some of those other colors coming out. So I'm just kind of having fun with it. So cute. But I love how like those colors stay really separate because we sort of layered them into the bag in that way, which is so nice. And you see, like I didn't really take much time to smooth out my cake, right? Like we sort of classed it. Classed it is like when you sort of cheat the method a little bit, but it still looks beautiful even without, you know, really taking all that time to make sure it was perfect. I'm just kind of doing a shell border at the bottom here a little bit, just to finish it off.
And which type of tip are you using again?
Yeah, so I'm using this open star. We've got this nice open star tip. But any tip you have is great. A closed star, even if you want to just go without a tip, you don't necessarily need one. But yeah, you can definitely, you know, have some fun. I'm going to add some balls here. And I know we're sort of at the end of time, but I'll just sneak a few of these on. Oh, so cute. This is very St. Patrick's Day, but in like a fun way where you can really make this any time of the year, to be fair. Oh, look at it from the front if you can, because it's so fun. Yeah, can you see? I know you sort of missed that part, but I just sort of shell bordered it at the bottom. And to do that, all I did was like this. Just push and then pull. Just like that. Yeah. I know, isn't this fun? And I have to cut it so you can see the inside. But yeah, like some rainbows. It's so festive. Let me cut in before you guys have to go. Always wet your knife in hot water. That's the best way to get clean slices. Let's take a look at the inside here. I'm so excited. She's very moist. Ooh. Rinsing between cuts. Wiping between cuts. I'll do a small-ish piece. But she's a big girl. Oh, let's get a plate. Okay. Come on out, my lady. It's always hard to get the first slice out, right? She's always a fighter. How fun! Isn't that fun? Look how festive. So fun. So moist. So delicious. And like just so much fun for St. Patrick's Day. I think it's just a treat. Or for summer parties or anything like that. Look at those colors. So fun. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, and we did do that in an hour. To be fair, I have my cake layers, chilled and ready. Make sure if you are making your cake layers, you cool them completely. Optional to refrigerate or freeze before you stack, but that'll definitely help the process. Thank you guys so much. Happy St. Patrick's Day to those of you who are celebrating. Have a great weekend. See you next week for lemon tarts, which are so delicious. A little bit of sour cream in there for extra richness. They're just really, really yummy. So definitely come by for that. And if you want to reach out with any questions, I would say the Michael's Instagram, Learn with Michael's, or I'm on Instagram as well at Katie Rosenhaus. You definitely contact me there. And now my dog's barking at someone. Thank you guys so much. Happy baking. Have a great day. Thanks.